I'm back at the Manx Museum. With me is Yvonne again, and we did a piece talking about all the Archibald Knox exhibition, the special one that's been going on, and you're heavily involved in that, and you said come back a bit later on because we'll have something very special. And literally you've been doing a presentation here at the Manx Museum. It's just finished. This is very, very special for you and for the museum. I'm taking it. Archibald Knox work bound in a book, but well, over to you. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, this is the Deer's Cry, also known as St Patrick's Breastplate. It's, I think it's Knox's most personal and probably to him most precious work of art, because he worked on it for decades. It wasn't finished when he died in 1933. He'd been started working on it before the First World War. And as I say, it wasn't made to be displayed, it wasn't made for commission, it wasn't intended to be seen by anybody. It was displayed just before he died.
So it's just for him, he made his ideas, created his
It was a
work.
very personal piece of work. And St Patrick's Breastplate, the Deer's Cry, it's what's known as a lorica, or a prayer of protection. So if you think of it almost as a sort of an incantation, it's a prayer that traditionally St Patrick is meant to have written, and it was a prayer that protected him from his enemies. Now, it's meant to be 4th century. The scholars now say that it's a wonderful piece of 8th century Old Irish. It had been translated into English in the 19th century. Knox, at some point in the 1900s, decided he was going to take this prayer, which runs to several verses and several lines, and to illustrate each single page of the Deer's Cry. And what fascinates me is that every single page has got his most beautiful calligraphy, which contains all the interlaced, very intricate interlaced calligraphy. It's all beautifully then hand-coloured in watercolours, but every page is different. And it's as though every design, every colour palette, all of it is actually not just illustrating, but is showing the symbolism and the deeper meaning of the words. So it's as though he's brought together both his, in a sense, prayer life, because he was a man of faith. He went to St Matthew's Church, an Anglo-Catholic, and what fascinates me is that when you look at each page, you can't read the writing, and you have to sort of study it, and the more you look at it, the more the words seem to appear. And then you start sort of thinking, well, the use of the colours or the overall design, and suddenly you can start seeing layer upon layer of meaning.
I was going to say, it looks just like an object. I'm looking at there, and yet in there is all those words. And
what fascinates me is that I personally think it's as though it's a prayer and an act of meditation in both making it, but then the end product. But for every single page that's in this, what we now see as a book, when it came to the museum in the 1950s, it was loose pages. But one of the stipulations was it has to go into a book, it has to be bound together so nothing is potentially lost.
Is it priceless then?
I think in terms of Knox's artwork and as a sort of a window into the very private man, artistically, it's, to me,
Sure.
I think it is beyond everything, because it brings all the aspects of his life together.
I should point out I've got some shots of you turning pages, and people say, why have you not got gloves on? But I thought I'd give you the point, because things have changed about that, haven't they?
Yes, it used to be people said, oh, put gloves on. Now the attitude is, if you make sure that you've got clean hands, by using your hands and not gloves, you can actually feel the pages, because once you've got gloves on, it can actually be quite difficult, and then you might be more clumsy in trying to turn a page.
Now, obviously, this doesn't get on display all the time, or it's fixed, but I think it's available on electronic means, is it, these days?
Yes, you can go onto the iMuseum, and if you put into the search part on the iMuseum, Knox, Deer's Cry, it will bring up all the pages, and you can actually then have the opportunity to both study each design, zoom in and actually appreciate the detail, the design. and maybe sort of see little bits of interlace and think, oh, but I've seen that on a piece of metalwork, or I've seen that on a piece of jewellery, or I've seen it on a gravestone. And that's what fascinates me. All of Knox's work interlinks, and it's always the Manx crosses are at the base of everything. You know, it seems to have been something he was fascinated throughout his life, and you look at something like the Deer's Cry and it all comes together in one place.
I think you've got more seminars coming up, haven't you, over the next few months? People can find out about that from your website?
Yes, go on to the Manx National Heritage website, and there's going to be 3 more talks with opportunities to see the Deer's Cry in November, December and January.
And a Q&A as well, because you get a lot of that today, I understand, lots of interest.
Yep.
And the exhibition's on still here for a while?
That's it, and until January you'll have the opportunity to have a look at all of the beautiful pieces in the Cabinet of Curiosities, and 3 more occasions when you can see the Deer's Cry itself as well.